Hi, I'm Dweezil Zappa, and you're watching Infectious Magazine.
Well, I realize you were incredibly busy today with everything that's going on. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me in Infectious Magazine. How are you?
Good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy, but yeah, it's good.
Okay. First question. You've been holding your Dweezilla classes before some shows on this tour. How are they going? How's the response been?
It's been fun. It's been good. I don't know how many I've done so far, probably 25 or something. I did some on a previous tour, but there's been more and more word that's been getting out about them, so the classes are growing, you know, whereas the first tour might have been like 6, 8, 10, 12. Now it's like 35, 40, 55, you know, and what I find is there's a universal interest in sort of adapting and having some new ideas for, I guess, improvisational strategies would be the best way to describe it. People are interested in trying to take what they already know and then sort of repurpose it. I sort of talk about finding nested ideas in places that they already are aware of but might not have considered, because I went through the same process myself. So there's kind of a fun little discussion about how to make that all work.
Awesome. So I've heard from some people, older fans mostly, actually personally the guy who got me into Zappa's music, that you're almost a spitting image of Muddy play, and they kind of describe it as if they close their eyes. It's almost like you just picture how, like him playing. It kind of leads me to the question, how do you approach learning some of the more difficult things that you have to play with Zappa Plays Zappa?
It's a challenge. Each thing is a case-by-case basis, but one of the things that you mentioned in your question is really about more about the soloing style, and that there's a few instances where I will learn a complete solo note for note. I don't do it that often. I do listen to a lot of his playing and try to incorporate the idiosyncrasies and phrasing and mannerisms so that I can play certain things that he would probably play in certain contexts and use it as a guidepost, and then sort of fill in with my own ideas in between, because I want the music to still feel like it's all in context, you know. So when it goes to a solo, I don't want it to just feel like, oh, suddenly we're in a modern other world. So I usually try to really find a guitar sound that is very evocative of the era of the thing that we're doing, and you know, a lot of detail goes into it. But when it comes to the actual music, the written parts, I just have to learn those all by ear. I'm not good at reading. The rest of the band can read and learn from scores and things, but I have to listen and just learn it and train it as muscle memory. So it's like constantly training for the Olympics.
I believe it. I definitely believe with some of the stuff you're playing. Kind of a follow-up question. In one advertisement for your guitar masterclass, a quote from you, and I kind of paraphrase a little, describes that you've been experimenting with the different techniques for playing some of the more challenging and sophisticated phrases. It leads me to wonder almost if his influence has kind of waned or kind of grown stronger over the years.
The interest in all of the music, you know, my father's, I've always been inspired by it. So the more I learn, the more inspiration I gain from it, because the more I understand it, the more impressed I am that he did what he did, because it's mind-boggling, really. You know, the amount of work that he did, the amount of compositions, the amount of albums he released, the quality in which they were recorded, all of that takes a lot of time and attention to detail. And you know, in a less than 40-year period, he did, you know, several lifetimes worth of work. And people, unless they try to do that with the same degree of variation to all the themes and all that stuff, you know, they just really have no idea. And so part of what I do with Zappa Plays Zappa is to play the music, but also give some people a little bit of insight into how he composed some things and some of the challenges that go into some of it, and just have some personalized stories that go with it. And one of the things that I hear from people is that they even people who've seen my dad, they say, you know, I never really quite got it until I saw you guys play. And I think part of that comes from that little bit of insight, because, and it also might be that person's level of maturity now versus them seeing a show when they're 18 and probably all messed up or whatever, and then seeing it later and realizing, oh, there's some actual detail involved in this stuff, you know. So we get a lot of that, but I think overall it's a very challenging project, because, you know, the issue that is faced with it all the time is that people think of it as novelty music or nostalgia music. You know, they don't think of it as being current or modern. And, you know, so we're doing the Roxy and Elsewhere, the entire record on this tour. And I tell people, I say, you know, this record's 40 years old, but really it's still from the future, because nobody has made records with this kind of sounding music on it. And so that's really the challenge that we have, is to have a newer generation be able to discover it and adopt it and realize that it's timeless. And the ones that do, it's an obvious click, you know, that if they figure it out and right away. And I mean, Chris Norton, who plays keyboards in the band, is a good example. He's 26, or just turned 26. Never heard Frank's music until he saw our DVD, and then he said, oh, I gotta learn this stuff. I want to be in that band, you know. So that's exactly the reason that this band exists, so that people could want to be inspired by it and want to carry the music into the future, but play it with respect and play it the way it's supposed to be played. So we're more of like a repertory ensemble than we are a tribute band, you know, because people like to say, oh, tribute band or cover band. You know, if you want to make that analogy, then you have to look at an orchestra as a cover band and say that's what all orchestras are, because they're not playing music that they've written, but they're taking a traditional approach and keeping something alive that is, you know, decades older. And so that's what we try to do, but you know, it's hard to get the word out so that people can understand it in that way, because it's too easy for people to just go, oh, it's a cover band, I could go see somebody down the street and do that. Really, I don't think so, because this stuff's hard.
Yeah, that is for sure. That's a great point you make. Another one, I've heard through the grapevine that you've maybe been writing your own music again. Is that a...
I've been trying to find some time to do it. I have a piece of music that is being played before we walk out on stage. The last thing that people hear is this new piece of music of mine that's called Dinosaur. But it comes from my Dweezilla camp. I had a bunch of instructors that came to teach at that, and I said, well, let's do a collaboration. And I had them all play on this piece of music that you'll hear. But then I thought, well, why doesn't each instructor make a piece of music and then we all play on it? So it's this cross-pollination kind of record of different styles of guitar playing and a different approach, and it's pretty interesting. I haven't had a chance to totally finish all of the things that are going to be on that record, but it should hopefully come out next year now.
Awesome. That's great. Are you using the ZPZ band for it?
It's the rhythm section is the same rhythm section. It's Kurt Morgan on bass and Ryan Brown on drums, and then I'm playing the rhythm guitar and some lead stuff, and then it's the other guys who just come in and guest. But I did all of the special production. It's almost like an audio movie the way this thing is all. It's cool. Yeah. There's also a special appearance by my dad playing a guitar solo at the end of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's gonna be cool. Yeah. How's your, I think we've kind of touched on this, but how's your practicing kind of evolved over the years?
Well, I get to do less and less and less because my kids are getting older, and you know, there's so much stuff. When I'm home on tour, I mean, from tour, I may not even pick up a guitar for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you know. And then when it comes time to go on tour again, I have to really woodshed like in a very short period of time, you know. So when I started this thing, I had all the time in the world, you know, because the kids weren't there yet, you know. And I could practice 8, 10 hours a day, and I could do stuff that I needed to do to really dial things in. Now I have to find 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, you know, and it's hard. It's really hard to focus and do that, but that's that's the nature of the balancing act that I have.
Sounds definitely like you balance a lot. So, what is one question you'd like to be asked but never have been, and what would be that answer?
I really never have thought about it, so you know, I get asked a lot of the same questions all the time, and I still answer those the same way. So you know, I mean, my job is to try to make sure that there's some type of reasonable answer for these things that can make it so people are interested in the thing. So I don't actually take it any further and say, hey, I wonder if somebody will ever ask me this, you know. I suppose some people do, but I have a lot of other things going on.
Yeah. Another one, you wrote My Mother, to go back, you wrote My Mother as a Space Cadet at the age of 12. Since then, you've released 5 other original recordings, 6 with Zappa Plays Zappa, and a bunch of other things, some very prestigious musicians. Do you ever find yourself kind of pulled in one direction or the other between Zappa Plays Zappa and what you, like, new compositions? And
I haven't had much time to work on my own music for a long time, so it's not really applicable at the moment because, you know, I usually the time that I spend these days on music is working on something for Zappa Plays Zappa, but more and more people are interested in hearing something that I would do outside of that, or that the band would do outside of that, because they like the band as a band, you know, so they want to say, hey, well, what else do you guys do, you know? So that's something that I would like to take some time to focus on. And I can imagine that, you know, it would get harder to have the balancing act between, you know, both sides of, you know, whatever, my own music and Zappa Plays Zappa, you know, at the point where I really get more involved in it. But at the moment, it's still been the main thing I have to spend time on.
yeah, fair enough. There's a lot of practicing involved.
Yep.
Sounds.
Mm-hmm. If people have never heard Frank's music before, you know, we're sort of the conduit to people being able to check it out. But the thing that is really interesting about his music is that it was really designed to be experienced in a live setting. So because he's not available to do that now, you know, we're doing what we can to give people that opportunity. So the younger generations are getting this opportunity, and also the core fans are getting a chance to you know, re-experience that connection with the music in a live way. But what it really does is it just makes people connect to the simple idea that if you can manipulate an instrument well, and you can use that skill in an ensemble where everybody's doing something together to make this music, you know, that's this universal appeal. It's like a whole other language that everybody understands. And so I think Frank's music can really appeal to a lot more people, especially if they see it in a live setting, because, you know, you see it and you wonder, well, how did these people even learn to do that? Because that seems like a lot of work. You know, and that was how it was when I was a kid. I would see the shows and I would think, how did they even learn to play that? It's insane. And they look like they're having a good time doing it. So, you know, I think if there's a message in it, you know, people, if they're looking for something new in music, they should check this out. It's probably pretty surprising what they'll find just in one concert with the variation of you know, how many different styles of music are involved in you know, one night's worth of Frank Zappa music.